Hey guys, what's up? Feels like forever since I've seen you. Hope you guys all had a great weekend. Um, Mine was fine, no complaints, and it's good to be back. So it is kind of hot in here, so if you guys can hear my fan, I will move it, and so I will. Let me know because I can hear it in my. I can hear it, but if it's bugging you, just let me know. What's up, Gabby? Yes, we are going back to Betty Broderick. Hello, Annabelle. How are you? Um, I am great, Flashman. I'm hot. It's kind of warm here, but it's not raining for like 5 minutes. It stopped raining. I don't need to build a boat, and it's all good today. Okay, so it's been raining like crazy. Hey, little one. You have a fan on so you can't hear it. Okay, good. Good. It's hot. I'm not complaining because it's been uh pretty cool so far. So I'm not complaining about the heat. It's just the room I am in is hot. So and I didn't want the fan like blowing my hair. It's whatever. Whatever. It'll be what it'll be. Um, so we are going back to Betty Broderick. Um, she's been on the stand. We've done two parts, there's 12. So this will be part 3. I always forget to recap the trial. I'm trying to remember to do better about that. So this is the Betty Broderick trial from 1991. This is her second trial, be her first trial. Ended in a mistrial, not because they couldn't decide on her guilt. They just couldn't decide on her level of guilt. Betty is accused of unaliving her ex-husband and his new wife of 6 months, Linda Kolkena something, as they were sleeping in their bed as she broke into their home early one morning and put up some rounds in them. We've heard from Betty's daughters that testified for the state. We heard from Betty's boyfriend. Hey, Daddy Short Nuts, how are you? I only bring him up because on my YouTube feed right before I started was this old story about how the boyfriend had a storage unit and he didn't pay. And so people went into this, bought the storage unit, go into the storage unit, and they find these old love letters between Betty and this guy. I can't ever remember his name. And I think like the Daily Mail or something like that released them. And so this was quite a few years ago. I mean, like I think 4 years ago or something like that. Good grief, sorry. So Betty's 72 at that time, and this guy is 66, and he's married. He's moved on, but apparently, he helped one of Betty's daughters out monetarily after everything was done, and he was sending money to Betty in prison, and he has like this card, and one of her letters is like, "Hey, like, are you gonna send me? Where's my money?" and, and the other one says, if I had a penny for every time I thought of you, I would be, a millionaire. I'm like, well, it doesn't matter, Betty, because you couldn't spend any of it. I guess you could put it on commissary, but then you probably ate so many honey buns you couldn't get out of your cell, but whatever. So I don't know. It was just funny that it popped up on my feed. I always joke with my husband. It's kind of a joke in that our phones are always listening. Always listening. Like, stop it. So anyway, we are now onto the defense presenting their case. Their first witnesses were kind of strange, did not help their defense at all. If you guys will remember the the expert that argued about the sheets and had his ruler out and was folding the sheets and told the guy, "Don't touch my sheets," and stop touching the sheet. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. It was all about blood, where it is on the sheets, where'd the projectiles go through the sheets. It didn't matter. I don't know what they were trying to do. So the state, she gets up. She's got the mannequins, full-size mannequins laying in the bed. She gets the alleged firearm in her hands and basically reenacts the crime. And I was like, you guys didn't think this through at all. Whatever. So yeah. So every time I move my hair, it's like poof. I don't know what's happening. But anyway, she wants a juice box like Sam. No. You're welcome for saying a legend. Yeah, that guy. Like, how much did they pay you to come testify basically against Betty? But whatever. What do I know? So anyway, we'll get back to this. Defense is still, I think, questioning Betty. I haven't looked ahead at this. I just looked to see how much time we had on it. So this is about 2 hours of testimony that we have. What did you say? A section of the hubby posting this video. Hello, Brandon. Oh, and we have a new, hey, what's up, Adair? We have a new church lady today, so I don't know. Gonna have to see what we think about her. See what happens. She's showing some legs. She's showing more than just ankle. She's showing some legs. So that is, if you look, that is not our original church lady. So no purple. Not only does she visit the Fountain of Youth, she visited the liposuction machine and healed quite quickly. You hope she has pep in her typing. She better be as peppy as the other one. Okay, so your dog thinks I'm real. He's currently trying to eat the iPad. Well, hello, puppy. That's because he knows I love dogs, or she knows. I have switched some things around of what I'm using to try to combat some of the buffering that may have been happening. And so you guys are my first test run at it. So hopefully it works, or I'm going to have to completely log out and log back in with everything that I used to use. So let me know how it is. I've got it. Aw. You take that back, Flash fan. Puppies are never annoying. They're cute and funny. And they're a lot of work. Let me know how the sound is, and hopefully you'll be able to hear it, unlike last time I tried to do this. Brandon. Oh, Brandon. The funny thing is, Brandon, I get to watch you like pretty much all day in Baker's chat. I just don't say anything because I don't want to get the whole AJ confusion going with people. So I just sit quietly and watch you torture Baker. And that's all I'm going to say. Oh, we have closed captioning. We're lucky.
Your oath from last week now. Go ahead, Mr. Early.
Broderick, we were talking about the fall of 1985. Was there a time in the fall of 1985 that seemed to be a turning point for you?
Yes, September of 1985 would have been the time that Dan told me to wait for about the soils engineer to tear down the house. And so all summer long when the kids were away and I went to Canada and stuff, I had no reason to go over to Coral Reef, the house where he was living, and really no reason to bother him. And so I waited for September, and the children came back, and I was waiting for us to start tearing the house down like he said. But it became apparent to me during September of 1985 that Linda was, in fact, around, and the babysitters were taking instructions from Linda at the office, and the pie thing was around, and so it became real apparent to me that Linda was around. He did not give me the $5,000 check to get the soils engineer to tear the house down, and I was...
Excuse me, I'm going to object to the narrative at this point.
Sustained.
And so
Was that her signing?
well, why was that a turning point?
Objection, Your Honor, that's vague.
Well, it's asked and answered. Sustained.
Well, Your Honor, may we approach the bench, Your Honor? She wouldn't let her finish her answer. Now I'm following it up with why was that a turning point? Never
Your
mind.
Honor, I'm objecting to the speaking objections of counsel.
Was there something else other than the soils engineer not being paid now? If there was, go ahead.
A whole bunch of stuff.
Go ahead.
September was a real turning point. It was when I started, doing the soccer team with Rhett, and then Dan wouldn't let Rhett come to the soccer team and stuff, and so he was interfering with me coming to the house and seeing the children, which I never expected that he would. And then right into October is when he finally started filing papers, and that's when everything switched to now it is a divorce. And at the same time, he was calling me from Notre Dame and saying, it was 20 years ago tonight, and I was very, very confused, because on one hand, he's doing all these kind of mean, awful things, and on the other hand, he's still calling me and saying it's 20 years ago tonight we met, and remember all the good times we had, and sending me flowers, love Dan and stuff, and I was getting really mixed signals at exactly the same time period.
Okay. And when you say 20 years ago tonight, what was he referring to?
Dan was at Notre Dame at the SC Notre Dame game, and I had 2 guests in my house, and if I didn't have those witnesses, I'd think I dreamt it or it was a nightmare or something.
Sustained.
What was he referring to when he said 20 years ago tonight?
He called me from South Bend, Indiana, and he appeared to be used to have, and he wanted to, reminisce on the phone and stuff. I was
Now-
kind of shocked because
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
In October of 1985, was there some kind of family function that was something that was traditional or important?
Objection, asked and answered.
No, you can answer. Go ahead.
And did you go to that?
Objection, asked and answered. She already testified to that.
Overruled. Go ahead. You can answer that.
No, I wasn't invited in 1985, but I knew that Dan went.
Okay. Did you get? How did you feel at that time not going to that function?
I felt left out not going, but then later on I found out that Linda had gone, and that's what precipitated me really confronting Dan, saying, I want to hear the story. I want to hear how you're going to tell me this was a mistake, that Linda ended up on the same plane and at a private party in Colorado. And that's October 28th, that's when he told me the truth.
Did you get any papers while he was away at this time?
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
That's sustained.
The did you have the
She is showing. She can keep her
children
cool.
in when we're talking about December of 85, January of 1986? Where were the children living?
The children were staying at Coral Reef because of the condition of the house that I was in. It was not livable for children. They would visit me all the time and spend time with me, but there was no furniture in it, and
Okay.
it wasn't livable.
And how were you dealing with your children at that time?
At that time,
Asked and answered.
Overruled. You can answer that.
at what specific time? Which specific time? Things change so rapidly.
Okay. In December of 1985, around Christmas time and the beginning of January, how are you dealing with your children emotionally?
Well, in November, I hired Mr. Jaffe up in LA, and so I didn't do anything
Objection.
about the kids.
Sustained.
The In the fall of 1985, Mr. Broderick told you about his relationship with Linda, is that correct?
Objection.
Yes.
Answer.
Well, sustained, the answer can stand. Go ahead.
Did he talk to you anything about your illness having anything to do with that relationship?
Well, the night that he told me the truth, he wanted me to go to a mental hospital because he thought I was crazy. And I said, no, I'm just angry at, what you told me. I think anyone would be in this position, but I don't think I'm crazy. I never thought for a minute that I was crazy.
Yeah.
But he wanted me to,
Your Honor, excuse me. I'm sorry. I don't have any objection to the defendant testifying, but we've already gone over this, and I think it's inappropriate to rehash things that have already been testified to.
Sustained.
During the summer of 1985, when your children are out of town, did you go anywhere?
Objection. That's an answer. She went to Canada. She's testified to it.
for 10 days.
Your Honor, I don't believe I've asked her that in this trial, whether she went to Canada.
The answer can stand. Go ahead.
The,
Sorry, it's like, all right, I don't have anything to ask. I only have 2 questions to ask her. I have to ask her about Notre Dame football. I have to ask her about driving her car through the front of the house. And I have to ask her about a trip to Canada. That's all. Over and over and over. Thank you. Also, Betty, way to show that you don't get frustrated easily. That's sarcasm, Betty. Oh my gosh. She's going to do a front Superman over that witness stand and try to take out the prosecutor too, probably. Allegedly, she does not do that.
showing you what has been marked LL for identification. Do you recognize this picture?
Yes, that was taken on the Canada trip at Bouchard Gardens.
And that's in 1985.
I think it was July of 85, yes.
The,
For the record, double L's an 8x10 color photograph?
yes, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, is it okay if I walk through the well?
Certainly.
And showing you M for identification. Do you recognize those 4 children?
Yes, I do.
And are those your children?
Yep.
Do you remember when that photo was taken?
Rhett looks like he's not even 2 there, so it's about 80 or 81.
Just make sure I pick up where I started before you're on, or where I ended.
You'd got to January of '86, moved to the Cypress house, I believe.
Okay. Now, during the time when Mr. Broderick had moved into Cyprus, were your children telling you anything about what their father was calling you at that time? And how reasons that they couldn't come over or they couldn't see you?
Well, when he hired those babysitters in September of 1985, he told the babysitters and the children and everybody else the reason he had the kids was because I was mentally ill.
Okay. And did that continue up until that time?
It always, yes.
Okay. Now, at the time that when the house was listed for sale, did you at all ever sign a listing agreement?
The Coral Reef home?
Yes.
No, I didn't agree. No.
Okay. And now, on Christmas at that time, did you receive any notice while they were in Utah about the sale of the home, that Coral Reef home?
While they were away skiing that Christmas, I received a letter from Dan saying that he was, is that what you're referring to? A
Yes.
letter from Dan saying that I could get my junk out of his house while he was gone on the trip, and then when he got back, he'd be moving.
Okay. And where the stuff that you were to take, where was that? What part of the house? Was
In the
it
garage at Coral Reef.
Okay.
We had moved so many times because of the crack slab to the rental, and then to the rental to Coral Reef, and then I had the Shores house and he had Coral Reef, and now he's moving to Mission Hills, and stuff was just, we were in moving upheaval for so long there since moving out of Coral Reef that things never got unpacked.
Did you get some of your stuff out of the garage?
Yes.
Okay. Was there a time later where you tried to get other things that Dan had taken to
Yes.
Cyprus?
Yes.
Was there a problem with that?
Yes.
And what was that?
That Dan wasn't using it, but he didn't want me to have it either. It was stuff he had in his garage.
Okay. Now, in January, were you aware of whether there was any kind of restraining order against you?
The only restraining order I was aware of was the original one that I think was September, October '85. That's the only one that I know about.
Okay. So there was at least that restraining order that you were aware of?
Right.
Okay. Did you have any, and in January of '85, did you have any legal visitation rights with your children?
No.
And was there anything being told to you about what would happen if you came over to visit your children at Cyprus?
That if I came within 100 yards of the house, that I'd be subject to arrest at all times.
Okay. And during that, and how were you maintaining were you maintaining contact with your children at that time?
I was trying to.
Okay. And how were you doing that?
I could see them at school during a school year, but there wasn't very much free time. I would have lunch with the younger ones, but I'd see them after school, but really they just come out of school and get on a bus and go home, so it wasn't much of a visit. But I'd have to go over to the house if I wanted to see them. That was the only way I could see them.
Okay. So
Or telephone them.
So did that mean that you went within 100 yards of that home to see your children?
Continually, yes.
Okay. Did you become aware of, at some time, some offers on your family home in 1986? In other
Some
words-
real estate lady called me about wanting to talk about offers on the house, and I wouldn't talk to her. And she sent me an envelope, and I wouldn't open it. I told her I wasn't interested in selling the house until it was part of the divorce settlement. And Mr. Jaffe, remember, told me, don't sign anything.
And why were you concerned about selling that asset?
Because it was the only thing that had my name on it.
Stand.
Okay. Was there, you knew who Larry Broderick was, didn't you?
Yes.
Were there any suspicions about him?
Objection irrelevant.
Stand.
Was there any suspicions about Dan funneling money to Larry Broderick?
Yes.
Okay. And why were you? What were those suspicions about?
Well, because I was party to a conversation in Larry Broderick's house a few years earlier, and Larry's friend was present, and he was getting a divorce, and Larry let known his feelings about women in divorce, and he said that
Objection, Your Honor, irrelevant.
Stand.
Well, did you believe that money was being funneled to Larry Broderick?
Yes, I heard Larry said he
Your
could do
Honor,
that.
excuse me.
You can answer that yes or no.
Yes.
We'll get to the reasons.
Yes.
What were the reasons?
I
Because
object,
of-
Your Honor.
State them on, Your Honor.
It's
What were the reasons?
Go ahead.
Because of this conversation that I heard with Larry, that was right there, I wasn't eavesdropping or anything, that he was advising this other man who was getting a divorce how to become broke on paper at the time of the divorce and then get the money back on paper, and that it was, Larry's feeling that his wife should not get one copper penny, he said.
Okay. And just before Dan walked out, had there been a number of dealings that you knew that
Hey, Bri. Thanks for the super sticker. Says, hey, you. Hey, you. Oh, and also, I solved the Brie mystery. That's my Brie. She likes to be a little trickster. Can recognize the dog meme. I don't have social media. Shame on me. Wow, Carmen. I'm just going to push play after reading that comment.
Dan was sending money to Larry Broderick.
A lot of them. Larry had control of all of our investments, as far as I knew. Dan was so busy being a lawyer that he didn't have time for investing, and so he sent all of our money to Larry, and Larry was the investment arm of our family.
Before Dan had walked out, had there been anything that happened with receiving any paperwork from Larry?
In 1984, at the front door, a big, thick manila envelope hand-delivered by someone. And I opened it up. I didn't know what it was, and it was real estate things or something about a deal in Colorado. So when Dan came home, I showed him that it came to the house, and he got very mad that it came to the house. He didn't want me to know about something that was going on, and I didn't think much of it at the time. But later on, I thought, no wonder he was mad about things.
Did you at some time find out, now during this period of time in January, were you hearing from the children calling over Coral Reef?
Every day, yes.
Okay.
But they wouldn't be calling Coral Reef. I was in the rental house.
No.
I mean, the
Cali de Cielo.
empty house, right?
Okay. And during the period of time, starting in 1985, did you start keeping any kinds of journals?
Yes.
Okay. And what were those journals?
Some lawyer told me to start writing things
objection, Your
down.
Honor, it's fine.
Stand.
Oh,
Okay. What were the journals?
things I wrote down.
Okay. And why were you writing things down?
Because I was so stressed and so upset, I couldn't remember things. So I wrote it down so there'd be a record that when I went to the attorneys, there was more of a clear record of what happened and stuff.
Okay. And when you were writing in those, were they always something that was happening that day? Can you explain what kind of writings would be in the diaries?
Well, basically three kinds of writings, little things that would happen or big things that would happen that day. And then I would go back and try to say what happened in the past, and then just narrative ranting and ravings about things are in there. not specifically tied to a certain date or a certain event.
At some point in time, the children talked to you about did the children talk to you about how Linda was dressing when she was around them around the house?
Yes, Kim brought that up, and Kim brought it up that it was embarrassing that she'd be in the kitchen in the morning with her teenage friends, and that Linda would be coming around in, well, she didn't call it Linda, she said, you know, it's so embarrassing that your father's girlfriend shows up in the kitchen in nightgowns and stuff. She just thought it was embarrassing.
Do you remember any incident where there was a problem with being unsupervised playing with matches?
Yes, I had a lot of problems with the children being unsupervised.
Do you remember the date of that?
Not particularly, but yes, he was starting fires. And he had knives, and there was a dog bite. I don't know particularly what date you're referring to, but the children were not being supervised over there.
Do you remember what day you took the furniture from Coral Reef? What specific day?
No. And I couldn't have taken much myself. I didn't move furniture.
If you could, do you recognize this page?
Yes, it's one of the pages out of the diaries.
Okay. And does this refresh your recollection as to the date, as to the match incident?
Yes, it's December 7th. The kids are alone because it says it was a Saturday.
She's just being asked if it refreshes her recollection. She should give it to herself.
Sustained.
And can you read this to yourself and tell me if that refreshes your recollection as to the time that where you first took some furniture out? Just tell me if it refreshes your recollection.
Yes.
And what was the date?
12/23/85.
Now, during the did you find out now during that period of time, was there any other
Objection in the vague as to what time you're talking about.
Sustained.
in January and February of 1986 now, did there continue to be problems with the children?
There were constant, everyday problems with the children. I was hysterical being separated from them. I didn't like the babysitters. I thought they weren't being cared for. I thought they were being neglected. They missed me. I missed them.
Was there problems with their clothes, going to school with clothes with holes in them?
There was problems with everything. Yes, that was one of them.
Now, every so often you would write, do you remember the exact dates that every one of these things happened?
These things happen continually, all the time. I might have made a notation on a certain date for a certain specific thing, but these were ongoing, every single day problems of me being one place and them being another place, and nobody taking care of them the way I wanted my children to be raised.
On January 7th, was there a problem with Lee being left home alone from school and being sick in the house?
If that's what it says, then that's what happened on that day.
Do you remember that?
Not
now?
clearly, no.
Showing you, and I would like this marked next in order, John.
Can Defendant's double N.
Show you some things where we have some specific dates in your diaries, just to see if that refreshes your recollection on whether there was a problem on any of these.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the relevance of the specific date. She's testified she believed it was an ongoing problem. I don't think it's an issue.
I don't see the relevance at this point, Mr. Rowland. Unless it's done not January, February of '86, which is what she's testified to. Do you need the specific date?
Well, I mean, I necessarily don't need, I don't know if I need the specific date, Your Honor, as to when all of these things happened.
Objection sustained.
It says everyone else crying.
Was there a problem with Rhett with an infection?
Yes.
Okay, and what problem was that?
The one under his arm infection? Rhett had ongoing sinus problems, and one time when I picked him up at Francis Parker School, although I don't remember the date, he was holding his arm like this, and it was a Friday because I was picking him up. And I said, Rhett, what's the matter? He said, ow, 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 don't touch, because it hurts. And I said, what happened? And he said, I fell. And he knew his arm hurt. I said, well, let me see. And I took his sweater off and his shirt off, and I was expecting a black and blue or something, and he had a huge infection under his arm, about the size of a golf ball.
Okay, and was there any, I mean, was it a open wound or did it have pus in it?
It was just a big abscess kind of thing, and he had had it for several days, he said.
Okay, did that upset you?
Yes, because obviously nobody looked at him.
Did you ask him why he didn't show it to his father?
Objection, Your Honor. Hearsay.
Sustained.
Your Honor, it goes to explain her conduct and state of mind.
Well, in 1986, we're still talking February of '86?
Yes, Your Honor, and there's been evidence as to phone calls and that she was upset.
Objection sustained.
You've heard a number of phone calls that you made, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. When you made the phone calls, were there things happening that you were being told about children's neglect and whether Dan was taking care of those problems?
Absolutely, yes.
Did you take care of his arm?
Sure. Took care of it right away.
At some point in time, did you find out that your family home had been sold?
Yes.
Okay. And how did you find that out?
I got a phone call in the late afternoon. I was preparing dinner from, I recollect it was Mr. Jaffe.
Okay. And were you informed how your house had been sold?
He started the conversation by saying that your house has been sold, and I was just shocked. And he said that they served him a 4-hour notice. I'd never heard of a 4-hour notice before. I said, what's that? He said, well, they can let the other side know that in 4 hours they're going into court, and if you don't show up, they can get whatever they want. But I didn't know about a 4-hour notice. And I said, how can they sell it without my name on it? I was just really upset, and I couldn't believe that anyone could sell my house that had my name on it without even a phone call or a notice to me. And I was only 10 minutes from court. I could have been there.
Okay. Now, did you have people visiting at that time?
Yes, my parents were here.
Okay.
And Brian from Canada.
Okay. And at any time, did someone try to give you notice at your house or on your phone?
Not at all.
Okay. And had Mr. Jaffe been paid?
No, and he never filed a response to the divorce, so he was not technically on that day at all, even my attorney of record. I had no attorney of record.
Okay. And do you remember on what date that occurred, approximately?
February 3rd, 1986.
Were you given any details of the sale? How it was sold? How much? What was in?
He didn't have any details. All he had was that he was given a 4-hour notice.
Okay, now what did you do when, before you went and contacted Mr. Jaffe, did you have any contact with Mr. Broderick about hiring a lawyer?
Yes, when I was served with the original divorce papers, I knew I had to hire a lawyer or just deal with Dan. So the day I was supposed to drive to LA and hire Mr. Jaffe, I went to Coral Reef first. And I said, Dan, why are you making me do this? I don't want to hire a lawyer. Let's just get together and work this out. I don't think I should hire a lawyer. It's a lot of wasted money. And I just didn't want to hire a lawyer. I just wanted to work it out as quickly, quietly, and cheaply as we could. Just work it out. It seemed very simple to me at that time of why couldn't we just work it out.
And was he willing to do that?
He wouldn't talk to me.
Now, what did you do when you found out your house had been sold?
I was absolutely shocked. I felt sick to my stomach. I couldn't believe it because it represented to me, as I've said earlier.
Sustained.
First of all, what did you do?
I said to my guests, I have to go talk to Dan. I'll be right back.
Okay. And why did you leave right then? What were you feeling that made you leave right then?
I had to talk to Dan. Something really big and important had happened. Mr. Jaffe didn't have his retainer. Who else would I talk to? I had to go talk to Dan. He's the only one who knew the answers. I had questions, he had the answers.
Okay. And so where did you go?
I went to Dan's house. Kim
Yeah.
and Lee were there
And what'd you go there for?
to talk to Dan.
Okay. And what did you do when you went to Dan's house?
I sat out back. Behind the house, there's a large area by the garage. We sat out there because Dan didn't want me in his house. And we waited for Dan to come home. And he did.
Now, before your divorce, did you know a Patty Monahan?
Yes.
Okay. And had she talked to you about her divorce?
Yes.
Okay. And did she tell you about anything that she had found in her divorce?
Objection, irrelevant.
Overruled, may go to state of mind. See where he's going. Go ahead.
Did
Yes.
she tell you about, and what did she tell you that she had found?
That she had found this Gray, Carey, Ames, and Fry memo to the partners of steps to be taken when preparing for divorce. And it was how to get the maximum leverage in a divorce.
And did she tell you what maximum leverage was?
Well, I remember from her divorce, and I lived through her divorce with her, that they tried to sell their home that they'd been in for a long time and move to a rental. And when my divorce happened, it seemed to me that the same things were happening. That my husband tried to get me out of the house we had 10 years worth of equity in and into a temporary living situation. That is, in fact, what happened. What saved Patty Monahan was that her house didn't sell.
Was the memo about things that they can legally take or how to do something with your assets so the wife didn't know? How was it?
I never saw the
But when she
paper.
explained it to you, did
When she
she?
explained it, she said that her attorney was dying to get his hands on it because he thought it would be very incriminating against her husband during her divorce. But all I knew is what I saw Dave Monahan do in his divorce. And when I saw Dan doing similar, if not exactly the same things to me, I used to say Dan went to the Dave Monahan divorce school.
And that was to put you at a disadvantage in.
And that was
divorce.
to get rid of assets and not pay taxes and not pay down credit cards and do all kinds of similar things I heard that Mr. Monahan did during their divorce.
When you went to, what did you do when you got to Dan's house?
I just waited for him to come home,
Okay. And where did you wait?
out in the back area by the garages.
And who was,
Kim and Lee were there.
did Dan eventually come home?
Yes.
And what did Dan do after driving up to the house?
When he saw me, he just went like gray-white. He was not happy to see me. And he said, "You have 10 seconds to get off my property. I'm calling the police."
Did you try to talk to him?
I said, "Yeah, yes."
What
I
did
said,
you?
"Wait a minute. I just want some answers. I just want to talk to you."
Okay. And what was his response?
He didn't want to talk to me. He wouldn't talk to me. And I said, "Girls, I mean, all I want to do is talk to this guy. I mean, it's going to call the police." And I was scared that he was going to call the police.
And Did you have any suspicions about that sale of the house? What the
I
purpose-
didn't know how much he sold it for, or who he sold it to. Or, yeah, I had all kinds of problems, or, how I was going to get my half the money, or what was going to happen. Because all I knew was a phone call, my house had been sold, and I needed the details.
And so what did you do when he told you that he was going to have you arrested?
I left. I was scared.
Okay. Was there anything mentioned about talking to attorneys at that time?
Yes, he said to me, call your attorney. And I said, well, thanks to you not sending him the $10,000, he won't do anything. And then he said, well, call my attorney. And I said, I have called your attorney. In fact, I called Mr. Ashworth in the beginning, which was Dan's attorney, and said, why don't you just do it for the both of us? And Ashworth would not talk to me at all. He said, I can't talk to you, Mrs. Broderick. I won't talk to you. I can't talk to you. So I had nobody that I could go to except Dan. And Dan wouldn't talk to me.
At that point in time, how did you feel about what Dan was doing with the house and in a 4-hour notice?
Objection asked and answered.
Sustained.
Did you return to the house at some point in time?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you do when you returned to the house?
I banged my car into his front door.
Okay, and why did you run your car into his front door?
I was extremely hysterical. I was totally upset. I was crying. The biggest thing that bothered me was, besides the sale of the house, the biggest thing that bothered me was the way he was treating me. This is the man that was supposed to take care of us and that I trusted and all that baloney. And I went to him for answers, and the way he treated me was just so awful and so cold and just non-communicative. It was just like, screw you, just die, get out of my life, go away. He had no respect for me at all.
Did you have a weapon with you at that time?
I don't remember.
Do you remember?
I know Lily says there was one in the car.
Okay. What happened at that time? Did someone call the police?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. And where were you taken?
To County Mental Health.
Okay. And do you recall a reason why you were taken there?
Objection calls for speculation.
Overruled.
Because I banged my car into his door.
Okay. Do you know who requested that you be brought to a mental hospital?
I assume Dan.
Okay. How long were you held in the hospital?
It was a 72-hour hold, they called it. I didn't know I could have gotten out earlier, so I didn't even try. I just sat there for 72 hours.
Okay. At the time that you were in there, did you get transferred from a county facility to a private facility?
Yes?
And did you end up running into a doctor who you had known through your dealings with Dan?
Yes, the same Dr. Zedimer that he took me to months earlier. Remember, I thought we were going to have counseling, and he was going to just leave me there because he didn't need counseling, only I needed counseling, so the same doctor showed up there.
And do you know how you got transferred from a county facility to a facility where Dr. Zunimer was?
How I
Yeah.
got transferred? You mean the paperwork or physically or?
Do you know why? Did anyone ever tell you why?
No.
You were transferred to a place where Dr. Zunimer was?
Well, I thought Dan did it. Dan wanted me moved.
Now, after you were committed, were you ever billed by that hospital?
Objection irrelevant.
Sustained.
I'll make an offer of proof on that, Your Honor.
I don't see the relevance of it. Come on up, make it off proof if you want. I don't.
How did you feel at that time about your need for psychological help?
At the county mental health, you had an interview with a psychiatrist, and there was a form you had to fill out. You know, what are your problems, and you know, why are you crazy? And you know, do you have drinking problems, drug problems, you know, marital problems, all these kind of problems? And the only kind of problem I felt that I had at the time was I couldn't get a lawyer. I needed a lawyer. I needed a lawyer to represent me properly against Dan, and that's what I wrote on the form. My problem is I need a lawyer.
Okay. Now, did you have any fears about seeing a doctor for mental health problems or confiding in a doctor at that time?
For two reasons, yes. That doctor particularly because he represented to me one of Dan's experts. And Dan, you know, was a medical malpractice attorney who had experts in every field of medicine that he used routinely. And his experts would always more or less say what he wanted them to say. So I would not submit myself to any sort of an exam by one of Dan Broderick's experts. It seemed ridiculous. And the other reason was he was trying to say I was crazy. That was his whole thing, is the reason he had to leave me and the reason he took the children and the reason he got a divorce was his poor wife was nutty. And his wife wasn't nutty, so I wasn't going to go see a bunch of psychiatrists to prove I was nutty.
Yeah. During the time that you were married to Mr. Broderick, was his image important to him?
Yes, always. From the moment I met him, his image was very important. All through medical school and law school, I tried to say earlier, the way he dressed and the way he carried himself and the way he acted, he always had a tremendous image, tremendous ego and a tremendous image. And it served him very well, always.
Yeah.
His clothes were always flamboyant. That was part of the image, always, even when we were poor.
Now, I talked to you about the you've mentioned the fact of Dan and drinking. Was there a problem during your marriage with Dan and drinking?
Objection, Your Honor. Yes,
Overall, you can answer that.
Yes, a tremendous ongoing problem, only I didn't consider it a problem for the very first 8, 9, 10 years. I thought he was just a party boy and just a fun guy, you know?
Was there any particular problem that would arise that was related to the drinking?
Well, besides the drunk drive, he had several drunk driving arrests, but besides that, you mean passing out and stuff?
Well, the next day, would there be any problems? Would the drinking cause any problems? He'd go out at night, kids wouldn't be around, he wouldn't be around. Would that cause any problems later?
The next day?
Yes.
Yes, Dan was not a violent drunk when he was drunk. When he was drunk, he was sappy and funny and romantic and slobbery and cute, and he was not an angry drunk. But the next day, when his head was as big as this, and he had a hangover, is when we'd hear about all the ranting and the raving and the smashing and the screaming and the yelling, and he just had no patience with anyone. And that was always the next day.
Okay. And during the time that you were married to him, was there any time that Mr. Broderick would get physical with you?
Yes.
Okay. And how would he do that? What kind of things would happen?
Well, again, in the beginning, I thought a lot of it was funny, but he, you know, whenever I said something he didn't like, he'd grab me by the neck and pull my face up into his face and say, "What did you say? What did you say?" Until I agreed with him, and then he'd say, "Okay." You know, and I don't want to hear that from you again. But you know, it was part of him playing with me, but it was also part of him training me what I could say in his presence, you know. And then there was a time when I skied up to him, and my skis went over his by just a little bit. And without saying anything or anything, his reaction was to hit me like that. And I just went flying in the snow, and I practically broke my leg because of the ski things, and I was crying and everything, because the ski bindings didn't pop. And so he was very physical with me in the beginning, but as the years went by, I learned to either placate him or stay away from him.
Okay. Was there times when he would do something, were there times when you would be present when he would physically do things in the room or where he was?
Oh,
The
sure.
doors or
Yes. When we were poor and stuff, it was more of a problem because we couldn't repair the things that he smashed, and we were afraid that the people we were renting from would want us to rebuild the walls and the doors and the desks and things that he would smash. But as we got money and as the things got to be ours, he could just smash anything he wanted, and there was no problem because we just have to go out and replace it or repair it. But that was his way of acting out, was screaming and yelling and smashing things and saying, next time it'll be you.
Did, in any of the times when he was destroying things, did you ever get physically hurt?
Yes.
And what kind of physical injuries have you, an example of a physical injury that you've suffered?
Well, when he punched me that time with the car, I got a broken sternum, and it hurt for months. I got a black eye when he went like that once. I don't know if it was his hand or his elbow or something that hit me, and he was going to smash something, and I got in the way. And like the time when I got pushed off the skis, I couldn't walk on that leg for a long time. I had a totally sprained ankle.
Did you learn to avoid Mr. Broderick when he was in a bad mood?
Yes, and I learned to keep the kids away from him, too.
Okay. Now, in 1986, did you learn about an event at Mr. Broderick's house on St. Patrick's Day?
Yes, St. Patrick's Day was always a big party and a big crowd and lots of noise and lots of drunkenness, but that particular one, Kim told me that it was really gross because Larry Broderick had a kilt on, a skirt, and he was telling the teenage girls that he was jumping on in Kim's bed, that he had no underwear on under it, and he was jumping on Connie, I think. One of Kim's friends was in bed with Kim, and Larry was jumping on him and staying in this kilt and acting like a real fool. And Linda's sister was there, and it was again from Kim. These reports are all from Kim. I wouldn't have known anything.
Okay.
It was really disgusting, and everyone was drunk.
How did you feel about the care that your children were getting at that time?
Probably the same as I did all along. I didn't think the babysitters were doing. I didn't think they worked enough hours. They weren't there enough to put the kids off in the morning and make sure that nobody was supervising the mornings. Was your homework done? Is your hair combed? Are your teeth brushed? Did you have a breakfast? Do you have a sweater? Do you have the right shoes and socks? What's happening in school today? Do you have the right papers? Do you have the, that's a big thing to me in the morning, that each kid is settled and sent off correctly. No one sent these kids off in the morning, any of them. They got up themselves, they dressed themselves, they complained to me there was never any breakfast food, or if there was milk, it was rotten milk, there was no cereal, there was no juice, and they went on a bus in the morning, which also made me mad. Dan paid a lot of money that these poor, especially Danny and Rhett, would ride this bus all over San Diego when school was less than 10 minutes from their house. It was like 5 minutes from their house. But Dan didn't want to drive them, so he paid for this bus. And then Lily had problems getting to school in La Jolla, where he didn't want to drive her, and he wouldn't drive her. And the day she was 15 and a half, where...
Sustained.
Did anything happen with Lee, problems with Lee in driving to school?
Objection, irrelevant.
Sustained.
Again, I would offer for state of mind as to...
Objection sustained.
You were angry and upset during that period of time?
Two of them were little, Gabby.
And were there a number of
Should
things
not
that
be
were
making
happening during
themselves
that period of
breakfast.
time?
Always, a whole big number of things.
They're too busy with holes in their shoes.
Now, in the spring of '86, did you start a job anywhere? Start working anywhere?
I believe so. I started, I hadn't seen the kids for a long time, so I got a job so I wouldn't go nuts.
Okay. And where did you go to work?
I got a job at a brand new establishment called Simic Art Gallery in La Jolla.
Okay. Now, how was the visitation being arranged then? Was there any kind of visitation schedule?
There's never, no. All through this, there was no visitation schedule.
So
And I hadn't seen the children for quite a while, and I was very nervous and very bored, and that's why I got the job. The job paid no money. It was only commission.
And how was the visitation arranged? How would you know whether the children were going to come visiting or not?
Well, I got a letter from Dan at one point saying that, I would have to arrange visitation with him, but he would refuse to take my calls or speak to me in person for any reason. So how could I arrange visitation with him? So I would have to, the kids would ask me, could they come? And I'd say, okay. And then they'd go ask Dan, could they come? And then they'd have to get back to me. It was total confusion. I'd get phone calls from kids at school saying, where are you? I'm like, what do you mean, where am I? Nobody told me I'm supposed to be there. And it was just total confusion. And it was never the same twice. Every single week was different. I wouldn't find out until picking up time at school on Friday if I was supposed to have those kids or not. It was impossible for me or the children to make plans. And if I had something
Objection, Your
specific.
Honor. It's getting very narrow.
Sustained.
Okay. And what would you, how were you trying to arrange your life at that time? Were you filling up calendars with other events, or were you trying to be open for your children? What were you doing?
My priority was always the children. But at that time, there was a reason, or I didn't get the kids for a long time, so I took the
Objection,
job.
non-responsive.
Sustained.
When you would find out that you were going to get at the last minute the children for a weekend, would you change your plans if you had any?
Yes.
And how were you communicating with your children at that time, when you started the job in May of 1985?
As I've said before, if I could catch them for a few seconds at school, which was rare, or the telephone primarily, or I'd have to go over to
Objection, Your
Dan's
Honor.
house.
Been answered as she indicated.
Sustained.
During that period of time, was there anything that was done at the Broderick house that made it difficult, and I'm talking about Daniel Broderick's house, to now communicate on the phone with your children?
Yes, the answering machine was put on.
Okay. And how did that answering machine work?
It was a separate machine from the telephone, and you could turn the volume on it up or down, or turn the machine off, and you could turn the volume on the phone up or down, or turn the phone off. And they were separate things.
Would the answering machine work if you were calling that house?
I have to pause this for just a second so I don't get in trouble. But it's really annoying that she's acting like they were turning the answering machine off because she was calling the kids, trying to communicate with them and being so sweet and nice. We heard what? A 40-minute phone call between her and her 11-year-old son with all kinds of language coming out of her mouth towards calling her his dad names, Linda names, not nice, by the way, and her son begging her over and over and over to stop saying bad words. And that's how he would say it. You have to stop saying bad words, because she was getting fined and in trouble with the court because she was calling and leaving such bad messages. So the fact that, yeah, they don't want to talk to you. I don't know any crazy Jamaican lady trials. If you know of one, Flashman, let me know. That's Betty. Betty.
And the phone was just disconnected, or no phone in the house, but the answering machine was connected to the phone line. Would it still work?
Yes.
Okay. And was there, were you on phone numbers or phone lines in that house?
Yes, two.
Okay. And what was your understanding of what those phone lines were for?
Is that there was Dan's phone line and the children's phone line. Dan's phone line, the phones, I don't know if I knew all of this back then. I may have heard some of it in testimony here, but I knew there were two phone lines.
Objection, calls for speculation.
Sustained.
Well, at some time you learned about at some point in time you learned about how that answering machine was being used. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And what did you learn about how that answering machine was being used?
Objection, Your Honor. She's indicated she's learned this through testimony in the trial.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'd like her answer read back. I think she said she learned some of that through testimony at trial.
Just ask her to tell you what
Okay.
she...
Can you tell me at that point in time what you knew about the telephone?
Right,
Okay,
I'll try.
go ahead. Try the
I
best you
knew there
can.
were two lines, Dan's line and the kid's line. I only knew the kid's phone number, and the machine was put on the kid's phone number with Linda's voice on it, and the kids told me, especially Kim told me, when she would call, she told me that the ringers would be turned off on the phone, or the phone would be locked in a closet, and that my messages could come through, but they could neither answer the phone or call me back from their line, and they were not allowed to touch Dan's line.
Okay. The, did you, at some point in time, were there times when you were doing anything to try to let people know that you were trying to call the house? Children know?
I'd call and call and call and call all the time. I'd just keep calling and calling and calling until someone would hear the click on the machine, or I'd get some sort of a response.
Okay, so if you were to call and talk for a minute and hang up, call and talk for a minute and hang up, the machine would turn on and off?
Right. And if they were right next to it, I got them a few times, they could hear the machine clicking on and off, and then they'd answer the phone, but there'd be no ring or noise or anything.
Sometimes when you were calling the children, would it be in response always to, were you just calling, or sometimes would it be in response to their calls to you?
We had a constant back and forth, and the four children did everything separately. Each child, when they wanted to talk to me, called me. So it seemed to be a lot of back and forth because they were all separate.
During the
And
times
I would
that-
answer they'd leave messages for me, and I'd call them back and I'd give them the answers, or try to.
During the time that you were mentioning that there was problems at the house and people hurt or there was no food, would the kids call?
Yes,
Would they sometimes leave messages on your machines?
yes.
And what would their attitude? Would they be calling happy, terrified, crying?
I got all kinds of messages. I got hysterical ones and crying ones and moaning ones and where are you, Mom, and why don't you call back, and I need this and I need that. The relationship between the children and I,
Objection, Your Honor, non-responsive.
Sustained.
Okay. And why would you keep trying to call back?
Objection, absent answer.
Sustained.
Your Honor, I'd like to be heard. I don't believe I've asked that question.
You may not have asked it, but she's answered it, Mr. Early. Go ahead. Ask her
He
something
broke
else.
his brain on that one.
Would you get all your messages when you would first system of trying to call back the kids when they were calling, wanting to know why you weren't returning their calls? Would all your messages be bad from the very beginning?
not at all, no.
Sometimes would you call a number of times, 10, 11, 12 times before you'd leave a message that had...
Objection, Your Honor, counsel is leading witness.
Sustained.
Can you explain to me some of the times when you would call, how you would, how the messages would progress if they did at all?
Well, I'd try and call back and just simply talk to the kids. And when I hit the machine, I'd be frustrated. And then I'd call back again and again, and my frustration would be escalating. And I'd get really angry that I couldn't get through. And it would mean that I'd have to drive all the way over there. And even if I drove over there to talk to the kids, I was, in contempt of court. So I'd get really, really angry that they were just using that machine on purpose to get me angry and to get me upset that I couldn't get in touch with the kids. And they knew that that would work every time.
Okay. And why were you leaving? And did you leave obscene messages on the phone?
Yes?
And why was that?
Because it all built, not only on particular days, but the whole situation built up to that I could never get through with the kids, and that they were just taping every single message every time I'd call, and it was just Linda just needling me and driving me crazy. She didn't live in that house. She wasn't a Broderick. She didn't belong on their machine at all. And it just got out of hand until the judge stepped in and put a stop to it.
Now, at that point in time, when you're screaming on the phone, how did you feel about what was happening to you, your ability to handle what was happening to you in court and financially with Mr. Broderick?
I felt totally powerless to control my life, my children, my finances. I had no control over any aspect of anything. I was completely at Mr. Broderick's mercy, and he didn't show much of that.
And so what were the phone messages?
Objection, Your Honor, vague and answer.
Sustained.
Well, were the phone messages for you a position of...
Objection, leaving.
Sustained.
Answer.
How did you feel when you were leaving those phone messages?
Objection, asked and answered.
Overruled. You can answer that.
I felt like it was my only place in time to vent my incredible frustration at the situation and at Dan and Linda and at the world in general. I was just furious.
Did you have any feeling about Mr. Broderick and trying to control you at all?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
How did you feel about the swearing and whether he was going to be able to, was that something that you felt that he was going to be able to control?
I know he didn't like it when I called him names. He got very mad when I called him names. So I purposely called him names to show him how mad I was.
The Did you do anything, how many phone lines were coming into your house?
2 regular phone lines and a cellular line.
What was the purpose of having 2 lines?
I also had a main, because I also had a main house line and the children's line, but being that they didn't live there, I just had 2 lines.
Okay. Who was there certain people that only had 1 number?
In my house?
Yes.
The cellular number?
You had 2 lines in your house. Did you ever have answering machines on any of those lines?
Yes, on the main number, 8320.
Okay. And did you ever keep one of those lines clear?
Yes, I kept that line clear.
And what was the purpose of keeping that clear?
So the kids could always get through. When I made outgoing phone calls, I used the other line so the kids wouldn't reach a busy signal, because I didn't have call waiting. So the kids could always call through, and it was 2 lines in 1 phone, and I could listen to what messages were coming in while I was on the other line. And then I could interrupt the line I was on and pick up the kids' call.
And if the kids left a message and if you didn't answer the call, were you able to call right back and get a hold of them at their house all the time?
No, that was the problem.
Okay. And did you have another phone? You mentioned a cellular phone. What was the purpose of that?
Again, before I got the cellular phone, I'd be down at the beach walking in the morning, or I'd be out aimlessly walking around shopping just because I lived alone and I was so
Objection,
bored.
non-responsive.
Sustained.
Okay. Why did you have the other phone line?
Because I'd miss messages from the children. So I got this cellular phone that you could hold in your hand. It wasn't connected to a car or anything. And it came with me everywhere. It came with me to the beach in the morning. It came with me to Nordstrom's. It came with me out to lunch. And cellular phones, the only people who knew that number were the children and Brad, so that they could reach me directly no matter what. And I'd leave a message on my home machine that said, I can't be reached, I'm not home right now, leave a message or call the purse phone is what I called it. And the kids knew then to call the purse phone.
Do you remember a weekend in around Memorial Day of 1986 when the children were brought to your house at the last minute?
Yes, that was, keep going? Yes.
Okay. And what was happening that weekend?
I was working at the Simic Art Gallery. I was getting ready to go to work. I had to be there within like the next 15 minutes. The next thing I know, the kids are crashing in my front door. Hi, Mom.
Okay. Did you know they were going to be there?
Not a phone call, nothing. I had no idea they were coming.
And did it cause problems at work?
I was frantic when I made some phone calls to Dan's house because I didn't want to go to work and leave the kids at my house unattended. But yet I would have disappointed work. I mean, I can't not show up at work either. So that's when I made those frantic phone calls to Dan's house. What we found out later is Dan wasn't home.
Sustained.
Okay. Did you later at some point in time find out whether Dan was in fact home that weekend?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Overruled. You can answer that.
After he dumped the kids on my lawn, he went to the Ritz-Carlton in Laguna Beach for the weekend. So he wasn't home and he didn't get those calls.
Okay. And was your job something where you could just call somebody up and have somebody up show up on Memorial Day weekend to do your work?
No, because it was a startup business too. We were all brand new, and I didn't even know the other workers. And no, it was too late to call anybody. I was supposed to be there. And so all the kids were hysterical, and I was hysterical, and Dan was gone. We couldn't get him.
And sometime did you learn about a request for a procedure on settling property of finalizing the actual divorce? In other words, that you would no longer be married, but continuing the property issues.
Yes, I got something along those lines that I was supposed to sign and agree to, and of course I wouldn't agree to that, no.
Okay, did you have a lawyer at that time?
No,
Okay. And you got it in the mail, is that correct?
I believe so.
Okay.
I
Did
may
you
have gotten
understand-
it at Simic Art Gallery. I got something there.
Okay. Did you receive a settlement proposal in March as to listing some assets, what the firm was worth and other things, from Mr. Broderick's lawyer?
I don't remember if it was in March, but I remember getting a thing that I couldn't figure out, right.
Okay. And at that time, Mr. Jaffe still had not been retained. He hadn't gotten his $10,000 yet.
Right.
Okay. The
Let's go. I don't know if you're talking about court reporter or Betty to buy a wig. Because we got a new court reporter today. So I don't know if you're talking about her or if you don't like Betty's hair because it's yellow. I don't know. So confused. You want your number fixed? What's wrong with your... It won't... I can't... I have zero control over that. But thank you for being a member for 3 months. But I have zero control over that. That is a YouTube thing. I cannot fix your number. It'll fix... See, Gabby says 12, but she's been 16. And it doesn't... I can't control it. I'd fix your number if I could. Sweet, sweet mannequin love. It's been great. Thank you, Gabby, for being a member for 16 months. And thank you, Carmen, for being a member for 14 months. Yours says 12 too. I don't think even if Betty had a wig that I could do that, Brandon. But you do you. I will say this about Betty, though. Unlike Lori, who came up with this little baby voice for court in Arizona, Betty's just using her normal voice. Because Lori, if you go back and listen to some past stuff with Lori Vallow, she didn't talk like that. I don't know what she's doing, but it was really annoying. I will not miss it.
Did you learn again that summer what was going to be, where your children were going to be? Summer of '86. Did your
Yes,
children?
Dan was going to send them to camps again and back to his family again.
Okay. Was that something that you were consulted about or talked to about at all?
No.
And who informed you of these plans, if you can remember?
The children.
Okay. And during that summer, where were you living?
July 86,
Yeah.
I was in the Shores house.
Cali de Cielo?
Yes,
And you'd been living there since roughly June of 1985.
correct.
And were you served?
Brandon, I do not know. I can't answer that. Gabby, thank you for, and Brandon, thank you for the super chat. Gabby, thank you for the super chat. No, I will not bring that back. That was horrible. It was a horrible, horrible trial. Brandon, I don't even know. No. So thank you, Brandon. But that was a horrible trial. It was awful. Actually, Gabby, I think Brandon's probably on an iPhone, and I think Apple takes a penny. It's not his fault. This is one time he's innocent. How the hell do I? Who? I don't know. I know everything. Oh my gosh, Betty. I can't wait for Cross. I don't know how many more we have to go through till we get there, but I can't wait. Maybe we'll get some actual relevant questions. Well, thank you, Brandon, for not saying that. I do appreciate that. I know all I'm saying is all, sometimes. Thank you, Gabby. Super sticker. All right, back to Betty. Ugh. Have we learned anything other than looks like the shocker?
Somewhere again with court papers?
Yes,
And where was that?
at the Civic Art Gallery.
Okay. And how did anything happen after you got the court papers there? Did you do anything in regards to that job?
Every time I got served with papers,
Objection, Your Honor, no, that's fine.
Sustained.
Okay. First of all, did you do anything after you got
Yes.
served with the court papers?
yes,
Okay, what'd you do?
I quit the job.
Why was that? What was
Because I had so much stress happening from being served with all these papers all the time. And these last papers, I think, were about him going to settle, whatever you just described earlier, about him settling something and putting something off to later. And I felt it was absolutely essential that I get a lawyer fast. So I was spending a lot of time in lawyers' offices interviewing lawyers and talking about getting a lawyer for this case. I was interviewing Mr. Hennenhofer during that summer, and he tied the case up for weeks because of military service, and I really thought he was going to take the case. And so I had him, and I remember seeing a whole bunch of other attorneys trying to get legal representation. And I told the people at CIMIC I'd be back when the legal stuff was over because I was just so nervous I couldn't function.
Yeah. Now, and how did you feel about being served at CIMIC?
Every single time I was served with papers, I felt like I was being attacked. That's how I perceived it. It was a new set of threats and attacks and scary things, and I didn't know how to react other than just get very, very upset and feel very helpless and threatened and defenseless until I got an attorney that was going to defend me.
Now, did you know what bifurcation meant at that time?
No, I'd never heard the word before.
Okay. Did you find out what it meant?
At that time,
Yes.
when I got served the papers,
Well, no, did you find out eventually what bifurcation meant?
when it happened,
Okay. And at that time, were you aware of any assets with your name on it from your marriage that any longer existed? Your house had been sold. Any other assets, did you know?
no, there weren't any.
Did you have any knowledge during that period of time, or were you given any input as to what was going to happen to assets, whether they were going to be sold, kept, how you could use those assets, what you could do with the money?
No.
Okay.
Oh, Brandon. Can it be young Bruce Willis? And then the other two in no particular order, because I don't want the Secret Service to show up at my door. How about that? I don't care about the other two. I don't know. Oops, put my own up there. They need to. I'm still choosing Bruce Willis. I'm still choosing the order I chose. That's just it. That's just it. I'm sticking with the order. Bruce, don't really care about the other two. Yep, Carmen, good job. Gotta learn, Carmen.
At that point in time, how did you feel about having some kind of control over your assets or negotiating a settlement?
I needed control over my life. I had no control over anything. There was never a single night I put my head on the pillow and knew I'd have a roof over my head. That house was in Dan's name. The car was in Dan's name. I had no flow of money that was guaranteed by anybody. It was just a little here or a little there or whatever Dan felt like. And I felt absolutely victimized. I felt like any time he wanted to just jerk me around, he'd just do that, and I was tied to the end of the string with him, and he did that, and my life went like that. And that's what he did all the time. And I couldn't get stability.
And what do you mean by stability?
Where you knew that exactly how much you were getting a month and exactly where you were going to live, and if you were going to get a job, how much you needed to earn, and if you were going to be a mother of children, were you the mother of 1, 2, 3, or 4 children, and if you were the mother, were you the mother 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or 7 days or nights a week? And I just needed something that I'm a schedule type person. I could never plan the next day because I never knew what was going to happen insofar as the money, the house, the car, the kids. Basic essentials in life that you have to take care of before then you have the energy to go on and do the other things I used to do in life.
Yeah. Did you know whether you even had any assets at all to be able to support the kids if support was cut off, or be able to send them to college or do anything else?
Your Honor, asked and answered.
I didn't.
Sustained.
How did you feel about Mr. Broderick at that time? And we're talking about around July, August of 1986 when the court hearings were going on.
Objection asked and answered. I believe she just gave it.
Overruled. Answer that. Go ahead.
He told the children he was sending them out of town because he was going to do something that enraged me, which he meant was the bifurcation. And so I thought he was being cruel and manipulative and controlling and cold-hearted. He knew I needed a settlement to have a life, and he absolutely refused to come to any sort of settlement on anything. He had no reason to settle with me.
Okay. Was there any court-ordered support at this time?
No.
Okay. And at this point in time, did Dan implement any fine system?
Yes.
Okay. And do you remember what the fine system was?
He didn't like me calling him names, so every time I called him a name, it was going to cost me money. And every time I called Linda a name, it was going to cost me money. And every time I stepped foot on his property, it was going to cost me money.
Okay. Now, who was going to be the person to decide if you had done something wrong and how much that was going to cost you, and who was going to keep it out?
Dan.
There was no court involved, there was no going to court to have this happen? Okay. Your Honor, I have some on this line. I would ask the court to take some judicial notice of some court proceedings that were going on in the late summer and fall of 1985. All right. I'll turn this right side up.
Probably beneficial.
I love this judge.
You've attached HH2 to the large poster board marked HH.
Yes, Your Honor. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Your Honor, I would indicate that there is a strip that indicates petition for dissolution in order to show cause an injunctive order was filed, the divorce papers on September 23rd, 1985.
Take judicial notice of that.
And that on October 18th, 1985, there was an attempted service and an injunctive order and a TRO attached. That would be the petition.
Take judicial notice of that.
That on, yes, October 18th. On October 25th, there was a order to show cause issued an injunctive order with a TRO attached.
Take judicial notice of that.
And we can note that that was just simply filed in the court. There was no action on the defendant.
Yes.
October 25th.
That is correct. That's correct, Your Honor.
Go ahead.
On October 28th, there was personal servants of the summons and petition that was filed in September.
Take judicial notice of that.
On November 11th, there was personal service and an order to show cause contempt.
Take judicial notice of that.
On November 21st, there was an order issued, restraining order of mutual stay away.
Take judicial notice of that. Might this be a good time to take a morning recess, Mr. Early?
If it's a good time for the court, that'd be fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'll take our morning recess this time. Please remember the admonition. We'll be in recess for 15 minutes or until 10 minutes to 11. People of the State of California versus Betty Broderick. Court finds all members of the jury panel are present. All counsel are present. Ms. Broderick is back on the witness stand. You may proceed, Mr. Early.
Have you noticed how well the mics catch every cough and every squeak of those squeaky freaking chairs, but we can't hear them half the time? So annoying. Also, I love how he's passing out pencils. Free Betty. No, I will not free Betty. Carmen, I just did, but you do what you want to do. And the alternate. Huh. Betty is cute. Now I just know you're lying.
Certainly.
Your Honor, I would like the court to take additional notice of some legal actions that are present on the board in 1986.
Is that January to
January till June.
have it marked HH-3?
I'm sorry.
It hasn't been, Your Honor.
HH-3. That would be what it would be marked.
Would be, yes. There, January 15th, there's a service of an order to show cause contempt and order to show cause custody visitation and injunctive order.
Take judicial notice of that.
On January 22nd, there was a meeting with conciliation counselor or appearances by Dan Broderick.
No appearance by the defendant.
Yes, sir. Appearances by Dan Broderick.
Take judicial notice of that.
Ex-party, there was on February 4th, there was an ex-party appointment of a licer on 4-hour notice, Your Honor.
Take judicial notice of that.
And another exhibit that I would ask to be marked HH4, which shows 1986, the months of July through December 31st.
So marked.
There was, I'd ask the court to take judicial notice of personal service on July 2nd of an order to show cause of custody visitation, injunctive order, and bifurcation and jurisdictional testimony.
Take judicial notice of that.
On July 16th, there was a hearing where the marriage was bifurcated and dissolution was granted.
Take judicial notice of that.
On July 29th, there was a personal service of bifurcation and sole custody, no visitation, stay away order.
Take judicial notice of that.
On October 2nd, there was a response to petition requesting dissolution.
Take judicial notice of that.
On November 11th, there was a stipulation and order in regards to advance against community property and payment of
I wasn't
attorney's
sure if you
fees.
would use
Take
the word
judicial notice of
maiden, Flashman. That was throwing me.
December 8th, there was an order to show cause and application, custody visitation, and support filed by the defendant, Elizabeth Broderick.
Take judicial notice of that.
On December 9th, there was a stipulation and order shortening time for the hearing filed by the defendant, Elizabeth Broderick.
Take judicial notice of that.
On December 11th, there was a stipulation and order in regards to advance on community that was filed by the defendant, Elizabeth Broderick.
Take judicial notice of that.
On December 16th, there was a hearing and an order to show cause in regards to custody visitation and support.
Take judicial notice of that.
There was, on December 24th, there was a service of responsive declaration.
Take judicial notice of that.
And on the 30th of December, there was a hearing in regards to custody, visitation, and support, and income expense declaration as well.
Take judicial notice of that.
Excuse me, while we're on this time period, the court was also going to take judicial notice of the July 14th, 1986 meeting with conciliation court where there was appearance by Dan Broderick and no appearance by the defendant. That was communicated.
We'll take judicial notice of that if somebody wants to put it on there.
I've got to put it on there.
I don't know what all that was.
For the record, all this judicial notice is taken pursuant to Section 452D of the Evidence Code.
Now, before the day that the hearing was to be held in regards to visitation, did you do anything to the court?
Oh, our church lady's back.
Yes,
What did you do?
I called.
And who did you call?
I called the courtroom where the hearing was supposed to take place.
And what was your purpose of calling them?
I said I could not get an attorney. I've been interviewing attorneys every single week. I had several different appointments, and I couldn't get an attorney by that time in San Diego. So I asked them to please put it off until I could get an attorney. I told them I had appointments the next few days.
Okay. And Did you know which court it was where this was going to be heard?
I guess I did because I called there.
And which court was that?
I don't know.
Okay.
Some court that was on some paper.
Do you know who Judge Milks is?
Yes.
Okay. And you know whether he was the one that heard the bifurcation order? In other words, was he the one that heard that order?
I don't know.
Okay. At the time that, can I have a moment, Ron?
Certainly.
Be right back.
I'll just come back to that moment, Ron, rather than looking for something.
All right.
Were you upset about how that hearing proceeded? How you lost complete custody and rights to visit your children?
Yes, I didn't know anything like that could happen.
Okay. And was there anything about the hearing itself, whether there was testimony or how that hearing proceeded, that bothered you, that upset you?
That I
Objection,
would.
Your Honor, the witness was not at the hearing. It would just be based on speculation of yourself.
Sustained.
After the hearing proceeded, was there a time that you learned about whether the hearing had proceeded with testimony, whether there had been anything done at the hearing to present evidence, or whether it was just done on the request of Ms. Broderick? Did you learn that at some point in time?
Right.
Okay. And what was your reaction to that?
I didn't know things like that could happen.
Okay. Were you happy about it? Were you upset? Carefree? How did you feel about it? Understand you didn't understand that could happen.
An illustration of how I felt about it was at my appointment the next day or two.
The witness could simply answer the
Sustained.
question.
Just give me the word, okay?
I don't know what the word is. I couldn't even breathe. I was crying so hard. I couldn't talk. I couldn't stand up. I didn't know what to do. I don't know how to describe those sorts of feelings. I didn't know it was in the realm of possibility that such things could happen in the world. I didn't know one person could divorce the other person and give them in exchange for that absolutely nothing. And I didn't know children could be taken away from a mother without any testimony or any evidence of any kind being presented, fully. He got sole custody, no visitation. That meant I had no rights to ever see my children again or do anything with them. I was just terminated as a mother.
How were you in 1985? How were you physically feeling at that time? At the time that you were away from your children over the Christmas holidays and January.
Objection, Your Honor, this has been answered.
Sustained.
I don't believe I asked you how physically feeling you're at.
She's answered it.
Sustained.
At this period in time, can you describe how you were doing physically to the things that were happening?
I was.
And we're talking about 1986, during a time when you were served at your place of employment and found out that you were terminated as a mother.
Objection, Your Honor, she was never terminated as a mother, ever.
Sustained. Street phrasing, Mr. Early. Might I ask how she was feeling in July of '86? What you're trying to find out?
Yes, Your Honor.
She asked it that way.
How were you doing physically at that time?
The only word I can think of is I was suffering. I was suffering terribly from the effects of the tremendous and relentless stress of the situation that I was in. I was in great pain. I was suffering. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I couldn't function. I was terrified of what was happening and what was going on. And I felt helpless and defenseless at that time to prevent it or make it stop or to defend myself.
Okay. When you mentioned that, at least as control, wanting some control over your assets, had that been your feeling during your marriage?
Objection, asked and answered.
Sustained.
During the summer when your children were out of town, was there any contact between you and your children?
Yes, I got letters from them when they were at camp, and I tried to call them when they were in Ohio.
Yeah. Was there, in the letters that you were getting in camp from the children, what were those about?
They were-
Objection, irrelevant.
Oh, sustained.
Your Honor, they go to state of mind, may I be heard?
Do you want to show the letters, or?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Is he thinking? Yeah. Walking around thinking? I guess they're looking at me.
Your Honor, I still object to the relevance of these letters.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure something out.
Overruled. Go ahead. Can I have it marked?
Yeah.
Defendant's double O, for the record, tell me how many pages that is.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 7 pages.
7 pages of letters. Is there a date on it, Mr. Earl?
No, there's not dates, Your Honor. They appear to be addressed to your mom, and there's children sitting.
Oh, that's fun. The everything just crashed on me, so that was great. Am I back? Am I not back? I have no idea. No. All right. Yep. All right. Hang on. One sec. Guess he didn't like that I questioned the fact if he was thinking. But everything went completely blank on me. Black screens all over the place. And lots of error messages. I don't know what happened. Trying to see if that's going to bring this back up or not. Because it's still here. 3. Give me a sec. That was weird. I was like trying. I was trying so hard to get back. And then everything just went away. Because my computer had had enough of Betty. Gabby to the rescue. I may have needed her, but I think I'm okay. I don't know what happened. Like I said, everything went. That was weird. It wasn't the one time you walked away from your computer. Well, stop it. All right. We're back. We should be. Should be good.
I'm sorry, may I be heard at sidebars for the relevance of the letter?
Certainly.
I was trying to figure something out and I didn't. That wasn't what I was trying to figure out, though.
I'm just going to show you down below. I'm not going to ask you the contents of it. You just look at them and tell me whether you recognize receiving this.
Yes.
I think that's what happened. Oops. I think that's exactly what happened.
In 1986, were there problems that developed when your children returned from camp in Ohio?
Yes.
And were those problems that were very upsetting to you and the children?
Yes.
Do you know how many babysitters there had been in the home in Mr. Broderick's home by September of '86? How many different ones?
Not exactly, no.
Okay,
Probably 5, 6.
And how are you getting along with that? Getting along good, not good?
Well, I wanted to...
Objection.
Sustained.
Did the
Hello, Brandon. I think your sister fell asleep, so you can't steal her today.
in the fall of 1986, was there a problem in regards to Red and a dog?
I heard that Red had been bitten by a dog.
Did he try to get a hold of you?
Yes.
And what happened? Did he want you to come over?
Yes, and he got a hold of me, but he got in trouble. Kim yelled at him for calling me, because then I came over and Dan didn't want me to come over, and so Kim was yelling at Rhett for calling me.
Okay.
And that even made him more upset.
Now, when you were getting the temporary support from Mr. Broderick at that time, was there were there deductions for things other than the fines that he was deducting?
Yes.
And what were those things?
Different bills of mine that he paid, different expenses. I don't know, it varied every month.
Was house payments and taxes and things being taken out?
Yes.
Okay. And the checks that you would get after all the deductions, what form would the checks come in?
Well, sometimes there'd be 5 or 6 different checks from different sources, third-party checks, not Dan Broderick's checks to me. And he'd add all those up, and if they came to more than what he wanted to give me, I'd owe him the next month, and he'd take it out of next month, and if they were less, then he'd write a personal check to make up the difference. But it was very, very complicated and different all the time.
And during that period of time, what would be the range of support that you would get when you actually got some money in the fall of 1986?
From absolutely nothing at all to substantial money, and anywhere in between.
Okay. Did you know from month to month whether you were going to be getting the zero amount or a lot of money?
Not until it came, no.
Okay. And were there times, did you always, every month, get money? For instance,
No.
in October and November,
No.
what would happen then?
Well, the one month that it was minus $1,300 is by the time he did all of his fancy footwork and fines and deductions and everything else, I owed him $1,300 in November of '86.
Now, in the fall of '86, did Dan leave the country at any time?
Yes,
And where did he go?
to Europe for 3 weeks.
And during the period of time that he was in Europe, had arrangements been made for the children?
There was a babysitter at that time named Marika, and she was supposed to mind them at the house, Marika.
And did you know how long Dan and Linda left for?
I just thought 3 weeks. I don't know who told me that.
Okay.
I guess Marika did.
Did you receive any phone calls while they were away from the home?
Yes, a lot of phone calls, the regular from the kids, and Marika called also.
And was there any phone calls about problems they were having with money and food?
Yes, as Dan left checks per week, but they were post-dated, and she had gone through that week's money, and it wasn't very much money. I think it was only $100 each week. The money was all gone, and she needed money and food, and Lily was sick, and she wanted some medicine for Lily, so I went grocery shopping, and I brought over medicine, and I gave them cash because they needed money.
Now, when you went over there in response to that, did you know that you were violating the restraining order and the stay order?
I was never sure if the restraining order that I got in the beginning that applied to Coral Reef automatically transferred to that house, but I knew Dan didn't want me in his house, so I went there, but I didn't technically know that I was in violation of the restraining order, but I knew he didn't want me there.
Okay. And you were being told that, even though you didn't know whether it was, you were being told you could be arrested for being there.
Objection, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Okay. Were you told anything about what could happen to you if you went over there?
Always. If I went over there, I'd be arrested.
How do you not technically know if you have a restraining order against you or not? That's a weird way to phrase that, Betty. That was weird. I will say, things have been kind of weird, obviously, because it just ended up shutting down earlier. When I said I was trying to figure something out, is because chat is not showing up in both places. I'm not getting generally every message unless you guys retract them. They still come up in StreamYard, so I try to watch YouTube. Not that you guys care, but they are not coming up. Well, they are now, but I wasn't getting messages in both places, and then everything. And that's happened a few times tonight. And then all of a sudden, everything just started freaking out. It's like I figured it out and then it shut down. But I didn't figure it out. It just shut down. I know. You guys don't care. That's true, Gabby. She knew, she just didn't care. Because how do you technically, Judge, I didn't know I had a restraining order. What the heck does that mean? What's the technicality there? And I wonder, I've been watching her. I don't know if you guys have or not. She keeps looking over at the jury, which I don't know if I could do in her shoes. It doesn't matter because no matter what her facial expression is, it's going to be wrong. As we've seen with the other trials, it's like you cry too much. If you don't cry, you're not crying at all. You're not remorseful, blah, blah, blah. But she's kind of looking at him like, I just wonder what they think about her. She's not staring him down. It's just weird. I don't know how to explain it, but I just wonder what they're thinking. I wonder what she's thinking. Because I wonder how they're looking back. Like, you weirdo? Or, aw. I don't think it's aw.
And did you, after Dan got back from Europe, did you get fined for going over there and delivering the food and the medicine?
Yes, he said he found out that I was over there, although it was no secret. I didn't tell anyone not to tell, and I didn't do anything to cover it up.
After the bifurcation hearing, did you do anything to initiate some action in regards to the divorce?
At what time after? Not immediately after. I didn't have an attorney. I kept looking for attorneys for several weeks and stuff after that.
Did you try some other avenue rather than the court system.
Yes, I saw an ad in the Reader newspaper about mediation, to mediate things. And that was my inclination from day one, was that Dan and I would just agree that we would not go into a courtroom and fight and litigate things. And so I called this place called Quinn Hargreaves Divorce Mediation Center, and I made an appointment to see them.
And when you went into to the mediation conference, did Dan show up?
I don't believe it was the very first meeting. I think I met with them separately, and then we were supposed to meet together.
And what happened when Dan showed up?
He had a real rotten attitude from the minute he walked in the door, that he didn't want to be in this position, and he didn't like the whole setup, and he had a lot of demand. And I can remember he counted them off on his fingers, that if you do this and you do that and do that and do that, and it was real obvious it wasn't going to work. And he left very shortly thereafter, and Mr. Hargreaves said, well, obviously this is not going to work. He was not amenable to it.
Did he give a reason why it wasn't going to work? Is there something that you did with signing the mediation contract?
Oh, Dan pretended that that had something to do with it, is that I signed my name Elizabeth with a Z, which is the legal way to sign my name. And so then I signed it with Elizabeth with an S.
And he still left?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know what the house payment was on the La Jolla Shores home?
I believe it was around $4,500 a month and
Okay.
something else, $86 or something, and it did not include taxes and insurance.
Was there anything being said at the time after you, after the mediation broke down with Mr. Hargreaves? Were you informed of something else that was going to happen to your property issues?
That's when Mr. Hargreaves started telling me that Dan and his attorney were going to take a default if I didn't do something. And I didn't know what a default was, but evidently Mr. Jaffe never filed a response to the divorce, so someone had to file a response. And Mr. Hargreaves was volunteering his services as an attorney to represent me on this case.
Now, did he... At some point in time, did you talk to Mr. Hargreaves about just filing a response?
Yes, I didn't want him to represent me on the whole case. I didn't feel he was the kind of lawyer that I needed. I needed a much stronger, better-known lawyer to take on Dan. But if he was insisting that somebody file this response, I asked him how much would it be to just file the response. And he told me $750, so I hired him just for that purpose, not as a retainer on the divorce.
Now, eventually you did I may have one moment, Colonel.
Certainly.
Now, before you retained Mr. Hargreaves, how were you being communicated to as far as your support payments? How were the letters coming from? Or who was the information coming from?
Dan himself.
Okay, it wasn't coming from Mr. Ashworth at that time.
No, everything was directly to me, from Dan.
And at some time in November, did you, in October, did you find out that there was going to be a problem with the November payment?
Yes, there were problems with the October and the November and the December payments. There were lots of problems all along there, all his fines and stuff.
Well, did you find out before you got the November payment or sometime that you were going to actually get minus money in November?
Yes, that weekend.
Okay. Did you, now when you found that out, what did you do?
I went to talk to Dan Broderick.
Okay. And do you remember what day you went over there?
It was a Saturday.
Okay. Does November 1st
Yes.
of 1986 sound like a time that...
Yes.
And what did you go over there for?
To ask him what I was supposed to do with no money for the month, how I was supposed to live, how am I supposed to make the house payment, the car payment? I mean, what is he doing here, and why is he doing it, and can he be more reasonable, and can't we talk about this, and what do you want me to do, Dan? What do you want out of me? I mean, I just stood there on the front lawn and talked to him.
When you went, why did you go over to talk to Mr. Broderick?
Because I desperately needed money.
Sustained.
Okay. Why did you go over and talk to Mr. Broderick rather than talking to his lawyer?
His lawyer wouldn't talk to me, and I didn't have a lawyer of my own, and it just seemed logical that Dan was the only person that had the answers to the questions that I had.
Okay. And were you having any, was that causing any financial problems for you at the time?
Having no money?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, what did Mr. Broderick say when you went over there to talk with him about your financial condition?
That I had 10 seconds to get off his property or he was calling the police.
Okay. What was your response to him when he told you that?
I tried to call his bluff on it. I said, you know, I have nowhere to go. Get off your property and go where? You know, how am I going to manage? What am I going to do here? And I didn't think he'd really do it, but he did.
Okay, and he did what?
Called the police.
Okay. When the police got there, what happened?
They arrested me for being within, he had the restraining order in his hand, the piece of paper, and he showed it to them, and they arrested me for being within 100 yards of his house.
Okay. Did you at some point in time try to get out of being arrested?
Yes.
And what was Mr. Broderick's response?
It was too late. He called the cops. There they were. I was a goner.
Okay. Where'd you get taken to?
Ladies' jail in San Diego, Las Colinas.
And how long were you held in that jail?
I don't remember. I would have gotten there in the late afternoon, evening, and I don't remember when I got out.
Well,
I didn't take a bed, and I wasn't assigned a room. I just waited up front until somebody could come get me.
okay, so it wasn't a matter that you were in there overnight and days and assigned a room.
Right.
It's a matter of hours that you were in there.
Yes, but I don't remember.
Exactly how many?
Right.
Okay. Now, when you were, do you remember calling anybody when you were in there?
Yes.
And who did you call?
I called Melanie Fuller, my neighbor and friend.
Okay. And did somebody come eventually and pick you up at the jail?
Yes, she was afraid to come. She didn't know where it was or anything, and so she called Brad Wright, who was her friend, and he said that he'd come get me.
Did you stay on the phone with Melanie for very long?
I called her back after she called Brad, and I stayed on the phone with her a long time because I was so afraid I didn't want to hang up the phone. Somebody else in the tank was threatening me.
Okay. And what do you mean they were threatening you?
They were scaring me as it was a small tank, and I guess she was under the influence or something, and she just started yelling at me, and I was like, Melanie, don't hang up. Don't leave me here.
Okay. Now when you got out of jail that night, did you call the press?
No.
Did you call the papers in San Diego?
No.
Now, at the end of 1986, did you see your children for Thanksgiving?
only by default. They arrived at my lawn 9 p.m. at night by taxi. They said there had been a fight at Dan's house, and Linda was calling Dan an asshole, and there was all this screaming, and they got in a cab and came to my house at night after Thanksgiving was over, Thanksgiving night.
Were you supposed to have them that night?
I wasn't supposed to have them, no. I mean, no one had told me, but if I wanted them, I was pretty much guaranteed I wouldn't get them, so I didn't have them for Thanksgiving.
Okay. Were they over there at all for Christmas?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Are those holidays important to you, Thanksgiving and Christmas?
Yes, I'm a very traditional person, and my whole life was having traditions for the family and holidays and birthdays, and I had lots of decorations, and I had special dishes for each special time of the year, and Halloween and Easter and Christmas and Thanksgiving and birthdays, and it was a real big thing.
Your Honor, I would ask to document the arcing connection order. That's J. William Hargrave's agreement for legal services and fees.
Defendant's double fee.
Showing you what's been marked as WP for identification. Do you recognize this as a document that was signed to retain Mr. Hargraves?
Yes.
Okay. And when did you sign the agreement for Mr. Hargraves?
November 6th, 1986.
Okay. Had there something happened prior to November 6th that got you so that you decided that you better get some lawyer to represent you?
Yes, being jailed on November 1st and being left without any money, I had to do something. I was absolutely pushed into a corner. I had to do something. My only way to do something before was go to Dan and ask questions and expect answers. Well, that was out because if I went to Dan, he'd throw me in jail again. So I was absolutely forced to desperately get an attorney. I had to get an attorney to do something because I needed money to live.
And now, at the time of November, December of '86 and January of '87, what were your feelings in regard to the fact that it appeared that that you were divorced, and now that there was other issues? How were you feeling towards that action?
Objection, Your Honor.
Tammy, I will give you an official hello. Iris. That is hilarious. And hello. I never thought about her being Sarah Boone's mom. That's hilarious. No, when Linda broke in her house, Betty had a bunch of new clothes and shoes. And Betty claimed she was broke. And Betty also claimed earlier that she went shopping all the time because she was bored. And she went to Nordstrom's, which is not cheap. You said she was Sarah's third cousin twice removed. Shenny, I've been wondering where you're at. Like, where's Shenny? She's going to chime in any second. She was talking about being in Las Clases, something jail, just a little bit ago. When she got arrested for violating the restraining order, she technically didn't know that she had, which I don't understand how you technically don't know that. Las Colinas, yes, thank you. She was talking about being there. struck me as odd is she didn't remember how long she was there, because I think if I went to jail, I would remember. She did talk about being scared, which I also would be scared. I don't know. She has all this memory of other things, but then she doesn't have memories of things that just seem like you would remember. Like if she had a weapon and one time when she went over to Dan's house. Is that Latin for loony bin? I don't know. I don't know what Colinus means. I don't know. Betty, Betty, Betty. I just,
Question is big.
No, overruled. You can answer that.
I felt that I was forced to get in the courtroom and fight with Dan Broderick. I didn't have any choice.
Okay. How did you feel about what your situation was? How did you feel about the kids? You didn't have the children then, is that correct?
Right? I didn't. It was the second holiday season that I didn't have the children.
Okay.
And
How did you feel, given what your financial situation was, about your ability to handle the children at that time?
I felt confident in my ability to handle the children, always. But I didn't feel confident to provide a roof over their head or food or education or shoes or anything. I had no confidence that I had any earning power in the world.
Wait. Okay, so we got Los Colinas. Cola equals butt, so basically the butts. They named the jail the Butts. It means the hills. Dang it. I like your first one better. Tammy, I agree that Meredith Baxter Burney played her so well. Yeah, the second season of Dirty John was good. I can never remember the woman who played her in that one, but I'm still partial to the Meredith Baxter Burney miniseries. I just remember Meredith Baxter Burney like walking around as Betty, like Dan. Like she would always be like, I don't know, I can't do it now, but yeah, I don't. There's times when there's like Dan Abrams, if we're watching On Patrol or whatever, and he'll say something, and I say it to my husband, and I think of Meredith Baxter, but now I can't think of it at all. Sorry, it's a bummer that I know some things. Well, honestly, back then, two gals walked through a fence and got out. Oh, so they stopped letting out for daytime fun. Los Colinas equals the hills. It's flat land before hills. I like Iris's better. The butts. She got a movie too. I don't know that. How she told everyone all the jobs she had while Dan was in school. Yes, she told everyone all the jobs. And then, yeah, she told everyone all the jobs, then how broke she was, and then how much money she was. I don't get her. I don't get her. Yeah, Meredith Baxter just nailed her. Yeah, and she had no earning power. Oh, in other words, they have Betty a movie. Oh, I don't think so. I think she just has, I think there's the miniseries that happened that would have come out before you were born, Flash Van, way before you were born. You weren't even in the twinkle in the eye yet. I think, I mean, it came out like very shortly after this happened. And then Dirty John season 2, I think it's on Netflix now, but it came out a few years ago. It just didn't feel, for me, Tammy, that the second one didn't feel as authentic as the as the original for me, but I don't know. All right, we got about 10 minutes left. So hopefully, cross your fingers that everything stays running. Yes. Yes. Is twinkle in the eye the nice way of saying your daddy hadn't made you yet? Yes. Hey, I can't help when you were born or when I was born. All those long, long ago in a land far away. See, I didn't figure you would be. I figured Flashman would ask me what that meant, and I didn't want to have to explain it. So I'm glad it was you. Oh, well, I paused it. All the power in the world proven by the jobs that I went to look for and got. My thought was, wait. Yes, Jenny, I didn't. You don't ask what stuff means anymore. I don't blame you, Flash fan. That is playing it safe. Good practice there, Flash fan.
Proven by the jobs I went to look for and got. I had no skills that were marketable, and I could not earn enough money to pay rent for a family with 4 children and myself, much less the lifestyle that the kids had.
You don't have me by much, Tammy. I was 1973. I don't, Shenny, I'm not asking. I know you're old. I think you said you're older than me, so. I was not born in 1917. Flash fan was born in 2000. He's a baby. Actually, he's vintage now, but he's 25. Older. Okay. I will never ask your age, Shinny. You're welcome, Flash fan.
With the private schools and stuff like that. So unless I took the children with a financial settlement where I could be assured that I could raise them and feed them and educate them and house them on more than a day-to-day basis, I was too nervous to have them back in my household like I did in February '85 when Dan left, with no agreement about having a house or having food or having rent, nothing. Just, he left me then and I just fell apart. I didn't know what was happening, and I know I can't raise 4 children financially from nothing.
Before you went into court in December of 1986, had there been anything established as far as how much money, had there been any court orders as to establishing how much money you would get a month before December of 1986?
No, I'd never been in court before then. That was the first time we went to court, I think.
Okay. The feelings that you've described about being at home, how you were like, would you be different in front of people than you were if no one was around?
Oh, definitely. When I was home alone in my house with no one to speak to and this omnipresent pile of legal stuff coming at me all the time, I would get very upset about my personal situation, the way it was, finances and divorce and everything. But if someone arrived at my front door, I was always a good hostess, and I'm a nice, friendly person, and I'd invite them in, and they wouldn't know anything was wrong. And a lot of times I was invited out of the home to do things, and I would get dressed and prepare to go, and this happened a lot of times. I would literally get to the front door and I wouldn't leave because I was so upset and so depressed and stuff that I just couldn't go places and pretend cocktail talk. Everything's fine and everything's rosy, and the situation I was in was not suitable social talk. I didn't have anybody to talk with about it. It wasn't things you talked about.
Now, was there some time in December of 1986 that there was where the court ordered some court-ordered payments?
Yes, I went to court with Mr. Hargreaves to get emergency support, court-ordered emergency support payments, and he told me that...
Objection, no, stop.
Sustained.
Okay. Was there were you told what was going to happen, how the court was going to decide support?
Yes, Mr. Hargreaves informed me that there were guidelines that the court had to follow that were based on percentages of income. And I had presented Mr. Hargreaves with my budget of how much I needed for everything. And he said, I don't need this. You're going to get a certain percentage. And his impression was, for me alone, I would get between 30 and 40% of Dan's income. And if I had the children, I would get as much as 60% with the 4 children. And Dan was making well over $100,000 a month. So Mr. Hargreaves said, I don't need your little budget here. You're going to get...
See you, Iris. Have a great rest of your night. Shani, I was wondering where you were at with this, even though we're pretty new into the defense side of things, and we're just got a long way to go for Betty's testimony here. From where you started when we very first started watching this to now, how much you're kind of maybe finding out that the media wasn't telling you, that Betty wasn't telling you in the media. Hargreaves was her attorney, from what I understand, from what I think, if I'm following. Yes, that is one way to put it, Tammy. She's quite unique. She's quite something.
More money than you know what to do with. And so we went to court, and that's what he told me.
Okay. Now, after you went to court, did you find out something that went on in court about relative lifestyles?
Yes.
And what did you find out?
Is that what Mr. Hargreaves led me to believe, what Mr. Hargreaves himself believed wasn't going to happen at all. Dan put in front of the court that I was able to get along on this $9,000 a month, which was not true. I was never able to make ends meet and to get along on that because of the house payment and the taxes and the attorney's fees and having to fix up the house. I was very much in debt. But the judge looked at that, at the $9,000, as something that I was making it on, and so he would give me that plus a few thousand more to pay taxes. And that's all that he would give me, not based on Dan's income or our lifestyles before.
Did Dan also present budgets in the court for the court to base their decision on?
Yes.
Okay. Now, after that, did you start to do some things, at least as gathering things, to show comparative lifestyles?
Before that date? After that date?
After that date, did you? In other words, did you take pictures of how you were living, how Dan was living, find out where he was going, where money was being spent?
Yes.
Okay. Now, Mr. Hargreaves, when you retained Mr. Hargreaves, at first it was a $750 retainer to answer the default? At first?
I'm not sure if that was the amount, but there were 2 separate money transactions with him. One was for just that one purpose, and the other...
Will you look at your retainer agreement? Was the first, does that refresh your memory as to what the first amount was for Mr. Hargreaves?
Was just to file the default.
Okay. Now, after you signed the retainer agreement with Mr. Hargreaves, a few days after that, did he make a request for attorney fees to Mr. Broderick?
Objection on the conflict of knowledge.
Stan?
Okay. Did you become aware that Mr. Hargraves, within a few days of signing the retainer agreement, got $10,000 from Mr. Broderick for attorney fees?
I'm too confused right now. I can tell you what I knew, but I can't answer that question. I don't know what you mean.
Well, did Mr. Hargraves get $10,000 as attorney fees?
No, but important things happened before that.
Okay, I understand some things happened before that, but did Mr. Hargraves get $10,000 as attorney fees? Just yes or no?
Without my knowledge and approval, yes, he
Okay.
did.
Okay. And was that shortly after November 6th?
Yes.
Now, after Mr. Hargraves and was there some way he was able to get that fee? Was there some way that was worded without your approval? That he
I guess so, because he did it.
Was there an advance on community?
There's,
Was it his fees paid in advance on community, or you know?
Objection, Your Honor.
Yes, they were.
The witness
Sustained.
obviously not getting any
How was he paid the $10,000?
Dan sent it to him, I guess. But
Objection, Your Honor. That's optional.
Stan?
Do you know how that $10,000, was that a gift from Mr. Broderick, was going to be credited to you? Do you know? Have you ever heard the term advance on the community? Have you ever heard that term?
Objection, Your Honor. Counsel's arguing.
Stan?
Have you, I'll ask you nicely, have you ever heard of the term advance on the community?
yes, when Mr. Jaffe was doing the 10,000 retainer business, that term came up, that it would not be in advance, termed in advance on community, that the court would decide later with Mr. Jaffe's 10,000. But then there was letters back and forth between Ashworth and Jaffe and lies and everything, and then all of a sudden Hargreaves gets $10,000 advance on my community that I didn't know about. He also got a $10,000.
Stan?
That's funny.
After, now you go into court with Mr. Hargreaves, when you went into court with Mr. Hargreaves and you finally got the court-ordered support, was there a problem with that court-ordered support? Did it end up being less than you were getting before?
Yes.
Okay. And did you have to go back to court to straighten that out?
Yes.
Okay. And some point later on, were there other problems with Mr. Hargreaves during the time he was representing you?
There were constant problems with Mr. Hargreaves, yes.
And eventually, did you dismiss Mr. Hargreaves?
Not until I got another attorney, but yes.
Okay. And did you find out sometime during that Mr. Hargreaves had communicated with Mr. Broderick before you retained him that would put you at a disadvantage?
Yes.
Okay. How did you feel about that?
Well, I knew he wasn't doing a good job representing me. He hadn't even done any discovery at all before we went into court that time. It was just pathetic. And I didn't know why until later, and then I found out later that he had made an agreement behind my back with Dan Broderick that if Dan indeed sent him money, that he'd give Dan a good deal.
Okay. And did you see at some point in time a handwritten letter from Mr. Hargreaves to Dan that was written before you were retained, before he was retained?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, we made it. I don't know if that attorney's name's Hargraves or Hargreaves because they said it both ways. And it's driving me nuts. Soon Betty will be nevermore. Well, there. We're going to get rid of her for tonight. Holy cow. That was a... Sorry that my stream just like cut out in the middle there. That was fun. That was great. I enjoyed it. I don't know how many more parts of this that we have of him on direct. And then I'm sure we'll have like redirect after we hear cross. The prosecutor over there is taking notes and notes and notes. So I have no idea how long we'll even have on cross-examination, but I'm looking forward to that. We might actually see you, Tammy. Thanks for coming and hanging out. I'm looking forward to redirect, or I don't care about redirect. I'm looking forward to cross because we might get to the heart of the matter that's going on here. Because we haven't got there yet. He's very slowly building up to it, but we're not there yet. And we're just still hanging out here in things that don't matter. Flash fan, most of the time I say no, but I have no idea. So this is a kind of weird week, and I apologize because I wasn't here yesterday because it was my husband's birthday. I will not be here tomorrow because it is my dinner. It's my week to have dinner with my dad and brother. So I will be back. No, Bri. I will be getting up shortly after you get off work. So no. Part 13 is cross. No. I say no. I will let him know, Flash fan. Thank you. So I will be back Thursday. And hopefully by then, everything will have calmed down with everything. I have no idea what's happening with anything. Computer, StreamYard, I don't know. I'm about to throw it all off a cliff or out my window, whichever one's closer. I think so, Gabby. I think so. 1 week from tomorrow, Carmen will be getting here. So she will be flying in a week from tomorrow. We get to stay here for a little bit. Looking forward to that. I know she's looking forward to that. It's been October since I've seen her. So there you go. See you, Ronnie. Thanks for hanging out. See you Thursday. So with that, that's all I got. 6:30 Thursday. I'm trying to think, what day is it? We will continue on with part 4 out of part 12. So Gabby, your message was correct. We are on part 19 of the whole thing. Part 4 or part 3 out of 12 for Betty. So we'll continue on with Betty's direct examination. We're getting closer to the crime. Maybe we'll get to talk about it on Thursday. I doubt it, but we can keep our fingers crossed. So until then, you guys all, thank you for coming out. I appreciate every one of you for coming here, hanging out. Sorry for the technical difficulties that happened, but what are you going to do? So that's all. I could just come back. So have a great night. Have a great tomorrow, and I will see you guys all back here at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Time, 5:30 Adair time. And we will continue on with Miss Betty Broderick and see what she has to say and how she's going to be victimized on Thursday. So I'll see you.